Alright, so in today's video, I want to share with you a story about a friend of mine, a friend from like a long time ago, who was raised Muslim, but then later after he went to college and did his master's degree and all that, he changed his mind and decided that he wasn't really sure if God was real and that he was kind of leaning more towards being atheist. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you a story of an event when he lost his laptop, and I said, hey, let me pray for you. God can bring you your laptop back. And I want to share with you his reaction when we prayed and what happened after. So if you're interested, just keep watching this video to find out. So this story actually happens back in 2014, April of 2014. But 1 year prior to that, in February of 2013, was actually when I had my spiritual awakening, or when I went from being kind of like a simple, a little bit ignorant Christian believer, just kind of grew up that way culturally, to actually like a serious believer in February of 2013. I will link my testimony, I think it's right here, and I'll link it below in the description as well, so you can listen or find out more about that happened while I was living in Mexico teaching English. But let's fast forward a whole year to April 2014 and I'll explain what happened. So all of like 2013 and even the beginning of 2014, like I was really excited to be like a strong believer finally, and like God had just taken the veil off my eyes, and I was getting so much revelation and fresh perspective, and I prayed for God to bring me a job in February, March of 2013, which he did. My last video was on how God got me that job, and I'll link that below as well. But right after that, a few weeks later, I had a friend text me and he told me that he was coming into town just for one day to visit. So I'd actually met this friend in 2010 in South Florida at a job interview, and we started hanging out, and you know, he was just like interesting person to talk to. He had traveled a lot, but he wasn't Muslim at that time. But then 4 years later, after he had done a lot more schooling and finished a master's degree, when I saw him, when I went to pick him up at the airport, and then we went out to eat at the beach in Hollywood, Florida, where I was living at the time. I go back and forth between Nashville and Hollywood, Florida, which is Fort Lauderdale, North Miami, a lot, because I have family in both places. Anyway, so I told him, okay, I'll pick you up at the airport and we'll go out to eat. And at this time, when I went to pick him up at the airport, I hadn't seen him in several years, probably at least 2 years. And he just seemed like a different person. He just seemed like a bit more stressed, kind of angry, just a different personality. And I'm sure that he probably thought I was different as well. I had definitely changed a lot in the last 4 years that I knew him. I went from like not really knowing what I believed to being like a strong Christian, and I told him about things that happened to me in Mexico and coming back and going to church, and how God was really just, opening up like just new things for me. So we went out to eat. I don't remember exactly if it's when we got back to my car or if it was later that night, and he realized his laptop was missing from his carry-on bag. And so the next day he was calling the airport and the airlines and even like Apple to see if they could find this laptop or if anyone had returned the laptop. And he was talking to all different people to find out any information he could. So the whole next day he spent pretty much trying to call as many people as he could, or like waiting to get some information back to see what happened to it. And he just kindly gave up, and he was just like, okay, it's stolen, like I'm never getting this laptop back. And he was just like super frustrated. And not to mention, this was an Apple MacBook laptop, it was an expensive laptop, probably at least over $1,000. And it had like a lot of his stuff from college on there and probably things for his job. So it was super frustrating to lose it, and who knows who it could end up in whose hands. So on the way back to the airport, I drove him that afternoon back to the airport. He was just like, whatever, I'm never gonna see that laptop again. Or he was just like getting super, kind of like giving up kind of attitude. And I said, hey, you know what? Let's just pray about it. God knows where it is and he can bring it back to you. But my friend, he really didn't want to hear that, because he was kind of in this like a little bit rebellious type of phase. It seemed like he's like, I don't know if I really believe in God, and he was raised Muslim, but I wouldn't say he was ever very like serious Muslim or anything. And once he went to college, like his views changed a lot, and that happens in college a lot. People kind of lose their beliefs. So he was just like, whatever, you can pray. I mean, I guess if I get it back, I'll believe in God again. But you could tell he was totally like not excited about it. He was just like, just do it because you want to do it, but it's not, I'm not really like interested in it. Like, he was interested in praying. Of course he wanted the laptop back, but he's like, well, if you pray and I get it back, then I'll believe in God. But you could tell in his voice, like, he was just like, that's nearly impossible. And I was like, well, God, he loves to do the impossible, so let's pray. And like, I was super excited, super pumped about it, and I was like, all right, Jesus, you know where it is, you can bring it back to him because you love him and you just want to bless him. So we prayed, and as soon as I drove up to the airport departures, like, he was ready to jump out of the car as soon as possible because I'm pretty sure I like kind of scared him. Now, I just want to say that if there are atheists or people watching, that I respected my friend and he is totally allowed to have any beliefs he has. But I think also as a friend, if you've experienced something that changed your life, it's okay to share that with that person. Like, I'm sharing this with you and you can take it or leave it. So like I said, I dropped him off at the airport. He like ran inside as fast as possible, or not really, but like I was just like, he was like, gotta get out of here. And then I went to a friend's house after that night to hang out. And on the way there, I was praying. I was like, Lord, I put all my trust in you to find this laptop for him, and please give him this laptop. Show him that, you know, you are a worker of miracles and you can bring this laptop back to him.
5 hours later.
After I was done hanging out with my friend, I was walking back to my car from her apartment, and I get a text message and I read it, and he said that he got a ping that someone had opened his laptop in Miramar, which is like a little bit like 30 minutes away from where I lived. And so I think he had called the police, and I was like, all right, we're getting somewhere. He got a ping. This is awesome. But since he already had flown out of town, he's like, hey, can you go tomorrow to the police station and file a report, or just go in person and ask the police if they can go to this person's house and ask to get the laptop back.
Day 2.
So the next day I go to work, and then after work I just start driving directly to Miramar because it's about 30 minutes away. And on the way there, I just had the radio off and I was just like praying, God, like, you know where it is. Thank you so much that you have helped us find that laptop, and like, you know, and send it back to my friend, and he is just, you know, just impressed with your goodness and all these things. I was just like, thank you, Jesus, and just praising him and thanking him for getting this laptop back and just everything working together so we can, you know, figure out where it is and all that. So after I was done praying, after about, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes being in the car quietly praying, I decided to turn the radio on, and I was listening to a Christian radio station at that time, and I turned it on, the music was playing, and then like it went to a commercial break, and then after that they had a story. So then this story started to play, and the speaker, the presenter, was like, man, have you ever lost something really valuable, really important to you, and you just didn't know what happened to it and you needed help finding it? And I was like, oh yes, Jesus, exactly, well, that's exactly what I'm going through right now. Like, I need help finding a laptop. And then the guy on the radio was like, let me tell you about a story of a man who lost a very valuable laptop. Then I was like, wow, Jesus, like, you're listening to my prayers, you heard my prayer, and now I'm hearing this story about this person who lost their laptop and how they found it. So they get into the story about how this man lost his Apple laptop, maybe at a cafe or something like that, and he was going through the same thing my friend went through, trying to call the store, trying to call the company, calling Apple, just doing everything he could, but it wasn't working. And I was like, man, I can totally relate. That's exactly what I'm going through, and what are the odds that I hear this story on my way to the police station? So as he's going along, he's like, but then he got an idea. He decided that he was going to send a tweet on Twitter to someone at Apple and send him like his barcode of his computer to locate it and to get the computer back. Now, these days that is kind of common or maybe overused, but this was back in 2014 before, you know, like tweeting your complaint was really popular. So this was like a totally novel idea that I was listening to, and I was like, man, this is a great idea. Like, he should just tweet these people at Apple, let them know that this laptop has been stolen or it's gone or something happened, so that Apple can, you know, put it on their radar to help him find it. So anyway, long story short, after tweeting Apple, this guy ended up getting his laptop somehow. It was stolen. I don't know if that person who stole it had stolen other laptops exactly. I don't even know. He might have gone to court for it. I can't remember exactly what happened. But he ended up getting his laptop back. And I was like, wow, this is such a story. This is such a perfect confirmation of what I prayed to happen. And I was super excited to share this idea with my friend. And I just felt in my heart that, you know, this is going to work out. So I continued on to the police station, and I told them everything that I knew about the laptop and the situation and the ping and the location. And they kind of told me that this does happen in the airports and people steal lots of laptops, and a lot of times they can have a whole bunch at their house. So the guy told me that he could just go and try and get that one laptop, or they could open a case and get like a search warrant and be able to go in without like knocking necessarily and be able to get all of them. Because if you go and knock on the door and ask for it, they might bring you the one, but there's like, you know, hundreds of others in there as well. This is kind of what he told me. So he's like, what do you want to do? And at that point, like, I already had confirmation. I'm like, maybe my friend can just tweet, and maybe Apple can get involved, or I don't know. This was like 10 years ago. I was just trying to come up with anything. And I said, well, I'll just let you guys do what you think is best. So at that point, I pretty much left it in the hands of the police department, and they had my friend's number and his contact information. So I said, okay, from here on out, like, if you need me, let me know. But otherwise, I just trust you guys to get this coordinated and worked out. So anyway, I drove back home and I called my friend. He didn't answer. I just left a message and I was like, hey, I've got some exciting new news for you. And I actually emailed him and like the information, and then I told him about the story that I'd heard on the radio. And I was like, hey, you know what, why don't you just also try contacting Apple with Twitter? You just never know what could happen. This could help you get your laptop back. So the next day he responded to my email, and basically pretty much what he said was, I'm not interested, I don't want the laptop back. So at this point, he just decided to give up on getting his laptop, because he knew we had prayed that if God brought it back to him, he would believe. And at this point, he saw that maybe it was possible to get it back. And he was like, I don't want it, you know, just because I guess deep down, like, he was afraid that he, you know, had to follow through with his words and believe in God, who proved the impossible to him in his mind. Like, I believe God can do all things, but to him, you know, that was something that seemed nearly impossible, but then it started to become possible. So in the end, I was disappointed by his response, but I'd have to say I wasn't surprised. So in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, it calls us ministers of the new covenant, and let me read it to you. It says, but thanks be to God, who always leads us as captive in Christ's triumphal procession and uses us to spread the aroma of the knowledge of him everywhere. And verse 15 says, for we are to God the pleasing aroma of Christ among those who are being saved and those who are perishing. Verse 16 says, to the one we are an aroma that brings death, to the one an aroma that brings life. And who is equal to such a task? So this verse is really interesting because it's saying that believers are a pleasing aroma of Christ to those being saved, and those who are perishing, to the one we are an aroma that brings death, to those who aren't saved, to those who aren't believers. And it's unfortunate that my friend, like, he wanted to kind of just throw this situation out the door because he was kind of threatened with this idea he had to believe. And I hate to say threatened, but I felt like, you know, things could have turned out differently. I mean, he could just accepted it and just left it at that. But unfortunately, I never heard from this friend again. It's been over almost 9 or 10 years. Never heard back from him after that, which is really unfortunate. But there's another verse that says, Galatians 4:6 says, have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? And I feel like this kind of what happened. Like I said, hey, you know, God can take care of you. He can provide this back for you. But by telling him the truth, he could either, you know the truth and be set free, or by telling him the truth, he could ignore it, or he could deny it, or he could just be not interested in it at all. And that's basically what happened. And I know I was hoping for a positive end to this story, but I'm sharing it because, you know, sometimes, you know, God is trying to reach people, but not everyone wants to be reached. That's why one of the biggest sins is pride. It's like, hey, I know better than God. I can do it my way. I'm not interested in knowing about God or any of that. And it's unfortunate. And I would love for everyone to come to know the Lord and to realize life is so much better knowing Jesus than trying to figure out it all on your own. Anyway, this is my story. If you've had a similar story or know something that's happened, please share it in the comments below. I wish things would have turned out differently, but it didn't, and I've never heard from him again. So there are people out there on both ends of the spectrum, some who want to believe and just some people who don't want to believe. Anyway, if you want to watch more videos, definitely can check out my testimony. I'm going to link it below and try and link it here at the end of the video as well, and how God got me a job story as well. I'll link those both. If you want to hear more testimonies, I'm going to be sharing more faith topics, cultural topics, and content creation on this channel through my lens. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.